fighting a cold, so I apologize if my voice is a little wonky. I did want to say something. I know all the speakers that are speaking today, and they don't normally speak to management. Like, these are usually the kind of people who can't interface with management very well because they digress into code babble too quickly. And so I'm proud of everybody who's given talks today. So far it's going well. Hopefully the remainders of us keep that up. So today we're going to talk about managing performance into our Angular projects, right? Now, just to help me, just gauge the room, it will help me get a temperature of what's happening. How many of the people here are managers? Okay, so this is the manager tracker. So if you're a manager and you consider yourself really like code savvy, raise your hand. Okay, so some. All right, okay. My talk is for lower level, less code savvy people than that. So we're going to be talking about how do we get, that one developer to write performant code. How do we manage that into our apps? That's what we're going to be talking about today. And I want to talk about who owns the management of performance. Who needs to own that? And a lot of people think, hey, we should just put this on the developers. Okay? Performance is one of the things that if everybody owns it, then no one really owns it. So performance is one of those things that management needs to hoist back up onto their shoulders. And I'm going to give some tips today to make this very, very simple. And I'm going to give you some, superpowers to disarm some of these conversations, because I'm going to walk through some scenarios that I know every non-technical manager, every manager, whether you're technical or non-technical, has gone into these scenarios before, and they're very frustrating. But a lot of us are like, if I don't code, like I can't even with this topic. Okay, programmers don't always make it simple to talk about performance. We've all been in that scenario where we say, hey, I have this thing, and there's that one developer who just kind of starts talking at you. And they explain at you of all the apps on earth why yours can't fix the performance problem, right? And it gets very, very frustrating. So today we're going to walk through, hey, this is how you disarm those situations. This is how you take the power back and actually really drive performance down into your apps. But ultimately, I wanted to drive home that if you don't code, like, you still must own this. You have to own this. Like, there's only one person that's going to take this flag and put it on the top of the hill, and it's the manager of that team or the product owner. So given that this room seems like we're filled up pretty full with management and product owners, this is the room that actually has to take that flag to the top of that hill and drive it in. So not being code savvy is not a reason to offload this responsibility of getting performance into your app. So today I'm going to talk about two things specifically. I'm going to talk about reading the signs that we may have a perf issue. We may have some performance problems in our app, okay? And some people will be like, I got way more signs than that, right? And other people are working in organizations where things are so far going well, and they might not see these signs. And then the last part we're going to really focus in on is some tools to measure, to track, and to improve performance into our Angular projects. So let's first kind of focus in on signs of bad perf. And we all kind of own the, hey, is our app have bad perf? But I want anyone, raise your hand, let's be honest. Like, if we can't be honest today, then that's what conferences are about, that. Raise your hand if you just wait for someone to tell you you have a perf problem. Like, if this is your go-to solution, yeah. So a couple people raised their hand, like, a lot of us, this is our go-to, okay? And I just want to set this as the bar. This is the bare minimum. Like, I want you to imagine someone actually comes to you in this scenario. We have a perf problem, and you don't even address it then. Like, this talk won't help you, okay? If you don't even address it when the bare min of just it got surfaced and you still don't address it, if your organization is there, this is a different level of talk that you need than what I'm going to give today, okay? So, but the bare min is we wait for these performance problems to come to us. All right, this is better than nothing, but That's the bare minimum thing that we can allow to happen in our organizations, is allowing someone to surface it all for us. There's a lot that we need to be proactively doing, and there's a lot of signs that we need to be looking for to say, hey, I might need to pull a few developers off for a few sprints to focus on some performance stuff. So here are some signs that your app might have a performance problem. Okay, if you're spending cycles in your sprints dealing with some of these things, then I want to spend some time focused on this just to give you some red flags to start some conversations with your team. Okay, so if a customer reports at you, there's an issue. Has anyone ever had like they got one of their users got that kill the browser window because like there was no performance? Has anyone ever had like a user report that and you give it to the developer, and what does the developer say? I can't reproduce this. Like, I can't fix it if I can't reproduce it. Is that true? I mean, that the developer's not lying. They can't just shoot bullets into the dark and hope to hit anything. But like, this is a sign that you have a performance issue in your app. So I know some of us have seen this. Some of us work at companies where we track our conversion closely, and at odd times we'll see a drop in conversion. And if you can't tangibly get back to all your drops in conversion, you may be looking at a performance problem that you're unawares of, okay? And for an example, for a company like Amazon, if their page load time, if it decreased by 1 second, or if it increased, so it took 1 second longer on average to load Amazon for people, this would be a $1.6 billion cost for them, just for 1 second, okay? So 1 second for a lot of us doesn't seem too insane, but these are very expensive problems. They've artificially throttled people, and when they slow their page by 2 seconds, they start losing 4.3% revenue on their traffic to their website, okay? And the clicks they have equal drop-off in clicks. So as people are clicking around their site, they get that fewer clicks. And for websites that monetize off of clicks and off of time spent on their site, these slower page load times are really, really detrimental, and they compound over time. Like it gets worse over multiple visits. It doesn't just get better after the first page load. All right, so just to kind of give us, because like, hey, Amazon, 1.6 billion. We don't do 1.6 billion in a decade. So how do I track this back to my company though? So I want you to imagine your company makes 100 grand a day, okay? So that's about $36 million a year, okay? So if you're a $36 million company and you can track that, a 1 second page speed improvement for your website should equate to about $7,000 a day, right? Now, that could bankroll like your entire development team. Like that's a lot of money to save. And so having performance inside your Angular apps, it's a very, very cost problematic thing to do for any organization of any size. These bigger numbers for Amazon, they probably apply on smaller number levels to each and every single company that we work at. All right, who's ever been in that awkward meeting? Like you're in there and like the CTO or the CMO's in and your team just built the new thing that like, this is the next quarter's release, right? We're releasing this at our annual user conference, or like this is the rewrite of the thing that we already make all of our money on. So this thing needs to be the new thing. And we're in that meeting, and the person who sometimes graces us with their presence is gracing us, right? And you're like, all right, here, I'm going to show it to you. You've been waiting, and now's the time. And you show it, and it's like, and then you immediately say something like, we'll see what happened was. And if you ever hear anyone start with, well, what happened was, then you know that something just went wrong, and they don't even know the answer. See, what happened was, and then it gets worse because then like it's the manager, and they look at the developer, and the developer who, they're not great at speaking manager speak. They're trying to manager speak, but then they lose it as well. They start talking about like with the build system and the CI/CD and the bundling, like the whole meeting is starting to go into chaos, right? So this is a sign that you have performance issues in your app. Like if you ever have these disappointing meetings, you are dealing with some performance problems and some architecture problems inside your projects, okay? So this is one red flag. And then the last one is if you have automation around your app, and this automation, this is you live or die by your automation. Everyone needs automation. If this starts randomly failing, it's ran well for weeks, months even, and then it just starts like randomly failing and no one can prove why. these are additional red flags around, hey, I think you have performance problems in your app, okay? So when you run across these symptoms, it's time to have some conversations, okay? And these are all embarrassing scenarios to be in. And it's time at this point to stop just waiting for the users to surface it or someone in your organization to surface up to you and to proactively start talking about performance in your app. And the best time to manage performance in your Angular app is like the day before you started writing the code. That's like the best day. If you fast forward to today, the second best day is to start today. Okay, so let's focus on that. So let's talk about measuring, tracking, and improving the performance, the runtime performance in our Angular apps. Okay, so oh hey, it's that one developer. They're here. Oh, they're already saying no. I haven't even told you what we want yet. Like, we have a performance. We can't? Okay. So we have a performance problem, and I need you to fix it. Oh, you can't fix it. Why can't you fix it? Like, do we have some scenario that no app on earth has ever encountered? Oh, okay. Like, has anyone ever, there's a problem, you're non-technical, you can't, like, actually dissect code and be like, see, it's line 421. But there's an issue, and then this developer walked in and was like, we can't do it, can't fix it. Has anyone been in that scenario? Like, we've all met that developer, okay? And some of us who are developers are like, yeah, I've been that developer before. And so I'm here right now to give you tips and tricks to disarm that developer, okay? My role here, my goal here today is to say everyone walks out, and that developer who's just like, nope, we can't do it, you're going to disarm this developer, right? And this developer is so frustrating because 99% of the time they're totally right. Like your whole organization basically is riding on the shoulders of this architect, right? Or these architects. And you start talking to them, and you're like, hey, I need the thing. And they start with their answer, and they're like, well, remember back when we did the thing? And so far, you can follow that. Remember back when we started? Yeah, and you're like, yeah, I know when we started. And then they get one more sentence in, and you're still following. And then they're like, well, the bundler and like the common file chunking and the tree shaking, and then we go into the CI/CD platform, and you're like, I don't even know what they're saying. So apparently this is unfixable. And they're like, yep, it's unfixable. So this is what these developers do, and they're not intentionally doing it, but these problems that we're talking about, these are direct criticisms on these people. Like they don't necessarily mean to get you in problems, but you ended up there anyway. So this developer, while they are your best friends sometimes, this developer can be your worst enemy. So you need some tools. You need like some muscle power to get past this gateway sometimes. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So the first thing I want to show is a tool called Lighthouse. Who here is like a non-programmer who's used Lighthouse before? Okay. So it's a really powerful tool. And I'm going to show it off. So I'm going to show it off for everybody. So, cool. Spinning beach ball of death performance. Oh, cool. Chrome's dead. Cool. That's going to slow down my presentation, just to be totally honest. See, what happened was, yeah, seriously. Yeah, thanks, Jesse. All right. Okay. So, let me come over here, and I'm going to go to Angular.io. Okay, this is Angular's website. Did I spell Angular right? Okay, I did. All right. So when you pull up your dev tools, like on any website, if you're using Chrome, you can just like right-click the page and go down to Inspect, and you get these dev tools. All your developers that are developing for the web use this. Okay, every single one of them. 0% of them don't use this. Okay, they all use it. I don't like to deal with absolutes. 100% of the developers are doing this thing. Okay. So you get in here, and there's this audit tab, and this didn't used to be there. So some of your developers, you're like, hey, have you used the audit tab? And they're like, I've seen it. Like, there's an audit tab. Like, some of them might even say, wait, there's an audit tab, because it is kind of new that this thing's there, right? But you're going to get in here, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to run an audit and to look like an absolute genius, okay? So you come in here, you open the audit tab, and you say, run audit, right? And this tool is going to kick off a whole like years and years worth of people who are like the speakers today, all of them working on the same project to analyze any app on the earth, all built into this same audit, okay? And if you're lucky, you're gonna click that audit button. You're not, but if you're lucky, and it's gonna say something like what this says, 100 across the board, okay? So if your apps is 100, then none of the things I've already said apply to you, okay? None of what I've said today matters to you anymore, okay? It won't. You're gonna see it and you're like, Frost said I should see 100. Let me show you this. Just kind of buggering around last night, given where we're at. Let's try this out, okay? So I'm on Denver Broncos website. So this should be good, right? Because they're a great team. So that means their technology should be equally as great, obviously. So we're going to run this same thing that we did on Angular.io where we got hundreds. And this is probably more like what our sites will look like, okay? So then we run this, and it's doing a ton of audits, okay? It's doing so much stuff, and I'm about to show you the report. And when it gets done, it's going to spit out a report. And this is more, okay, get ready, like, get comfortable, stretch out your legs. This is more like what your app's going to look like, okay? And it's not because anyone's a bad person, because there's like nefarious intentions really don't largely exist at work, largely. That's largely true. But you're going to have some scores like this, okay? So the Broncos have great SEO. That's what we know, right? And then they have they have fantastic accessibility. That's actually a lot higher than a lot of websites. And then that's about all we can say about this website, okay? So if you're a manager and you're like, hey, I need performance in our app, this tool, you're gonna look like a genius at this point, okay? So let me kind of walk through some of this over here. So this tool is trying to like guide you and be like, hey, breadcrumbs, so Hansel and Gretel, follow this thing over here. And so you're gonna be able to say the first contentful paint. Who knows what that means? Most don't, okay, some do, all right. You don't have to know, okay, that's the point of this talk. The first contentful paint was 7.3 seconds on this website. That means like the first time that there was a paint that was like, I saw some sort of pixel with coloration that mattered, was 7.3 seconds after I started loading it. That's brutal, okay? And I didn't even, I'm gonna do one more thing. Who here actually has a lot of users that come to their website on mobile devices? Does anybody? Okay. So if you run this with mobile and you turn on the 4G, okay, what were we at again on that last run? Was it like 3? I was like, it was really bad, right? I don't know, whatever it was, 12, it goes down to like almost 0, okay? So when you actually simulate a mobile device with a 4G connection, it almost completely disappears and your performance is like, you have done 0% of the things that you're supposed to do correctly. Like, and so when you start looking at this on your app, it starts to get pretty abysmal pretty quick. But you can start having conversations with the developers like, hey, why was the first contentful paint 7.3 seconds? And now that that one developer starts to change their tune a little bit because now they can't be like, well, you see what happened was, and like they start saying like that, and then you know you got them on their heels and they're kind of on the run, and you now have the power. And you can say something like, crazy, I want that cut in half, right? That's not crazy. You should be able to say that. You should be able to say that. And as a manager, if you know what it is and what it isn't, and and the isn't is where we want it, you can say those words, and developers can start to react, okay? And then now all of a sudden you're managing performance back in your app. Remember we talked about 2-second load time slower, and people start losing tons of revenue. That's all of us today. So if I can say, hey, go from 7.3 seconds even down to 5. 5 is still really bad. Like, imagine 5 seconds on a desktop. Most of us, we abandoned. We went to another website at that point, right? But even if I went from 7.x to 5, that would be a massive improvement where I would start to see revenues come back into my website, okay? This tab is full of tips like this, okay? And you can just kind of start scrolling down, like time to interactive. When I went to this website, the time till I could actually interact with it and like start clicking and scrolling and using it, 25 seconds, okay? None of us should have 25 seconds time to interactive. If you have got If you have TTI of 25 seconds, you have a lot of problems, okay? You need to roll up your sleeves and maybe learn to code. Like, that's how bad it is. But someone in your organization needs to roll up their sleeves and get in and start looking at this stuff. But when you start using these kind of tools as a manager, that one developer starts to fade away a little bit, okay? And then their ability to talk tech babble at you and have you pass out and be like, all right, cool, I guess we can't fix it. Like, we have the one website on earth where this won't work, I guess. Okay, cool, I'm out. Like, their ability to convince you that that's the scenario you're in starts to disappear because you're like, no, these tools that every website on earth starts to run, we got 25 seconds time to interactive, and that's not cool. You start sounding like I don't know, like a personal trainer at that point. Like, you start to scare them. Like, they're like, okay, my manager's here to like get me into shape, and they're gonna make me do this the right way. This is how you own performance as a manager, as a non-coding contributor on the team, okay? All right, so now I gotta get my slides back up. So give me 1 second. Present this thing. You come over here. You go full screen. Sorry that I died. Okay, skip up to where we were. All right, and we're back. All right, so we're getting past this. Okay, next thing, the Angular CLI budgets. Who's here not heard of Angular CLI budgets? Okay, so some of us haven't. I want to show you Angular CLI budgets, and then I'm going to show you why they matter. Okay, Angular CLI is a tool that should be saving every organization at least 6 digits worth of money a year, okay? I've worked for organizations where between my salary and the other people helping me on the build, I know that we were spending at least 6 digits worth of cash a year, and now I get all of that for free through the Angular CLI, okay? And in there, one of those features is called budgets. So when your website, when we take all the hundreds and thousands of files that all your developers wrote, and we try and turn them into just 4 or 5 files. That's like our ultimate goal, is to get them to the fewest amount of files as we can, okay? And we want those files to be as small as we can possibly get them. Like, we work hard to get them as small as we possibly can. And once you get them to like their smallest possible size, you can say, CLI, that's my new baseline. If it ever goes crazy beyond that baseline, give me an error, okay? And then if your developer makes a mistake one day and they accidentally include a ton of code that yesterday wasn't being included, they'll get an alert. You'll get a budget alert. So, developers in the room, have you ever done that? Be honest. Be honest. Yeah, we all have. Okay. Even if we didn't know it. Like, in the last few years, it's gotten a lot easier to not do because people are becoming more aware of it. But like 2 or 3 years ago, every single developer in this room, no matter how good or new they were, was doing what I'm about to show you. So let me pull up a project real quick. Okay. Okay, awesome. Hold on. Okay. So this is a simple Angular project, okay? And when I build it, if I say ng build, this is all it takes to build an Angular project. That is amazing already, okay? But in there, it's taking all the hundreds of files in my app, and it's reducing them to the smallest amount of them possible, and it's like shrinking them up, and it's getting them into the smallest pieces I can possibly get them, okay? Actually, hold on. I'm going to cancel that. I need to do one more step on that. I'm going to say, let's build this for production, okay? Because I want it to be even smaller. Angular CLI lets you have different flags for different modes. Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Okay, so we're building this for production now. It's going to be the smallest version it can. And then I'm going to show you a really simple mistake that any developer, pick the best developer in this room, could make this mistake accidentally. Because it's a mistake that your tooling does for you. Okay, so I want you to look in our app, it took our main JavaScript file down to 215 kilobytes. Okay, that's pretty good. That on a 4G mobile device, that's still going to take a few seconds to download, but that's pretty good. I've seen way, way worse. I've seen like 3 or 4 megs before. So 200 Ks is a pretty solid amount for a small app. All right, so now let me go up into this code. And a lot of developers, we have to bring in code from other files, and that's what these weird import doodahs are. sometimes your tools will do wonky stuff, right? And they'll bring it in from a different spot, okay? And you're like, I know it's not in rxjs/internal/operator. I know it's just an rxjs operator, but I didn't necessarily type that. Maybe the code editor did that for me, right? So this happens a lot. It's happened on most of your projects. In fact, some of you are going to go back to your office and like, rxjs internal operator. You're doing this, like, okay, so this is a thing. Now I'm going to run the build, and just that one mistake that I didn't even mean to do, okay? It's going to have exploded my build side it's going to add an extra 50% to the size of my app, just accidentally. Okay, I didn't even mean to do that. Let's give that 1 second to finish building. But the cool thing is I've turned on these budgets. So I have this error that just popped up. Do you see that error? So imagine if when your developer ship to production, it's like, hey, something between this build and the last build, we got way bigger error. Don't deploy this. Imagine if you had that power to say, we don't grow inexplicably in our bundle sizes. We never ship inexplicable amounts of new code to production. Like if we're gonna ship a new big bundle, we need to know that we're doing that. We can't accidentally do that. Because these accidental shipping of massive amounts of code, this is how apps slowly start to die. It's never intentional. It's always accidents like this, very innocent mistakes. And you saw that line of code I wrote, that looks innocuous. That looks like a valid line of code. Most people in this room might just glance right past it and let that code go into your code base. So Angular CLI Budgets is another tool that managers can use to protect their teams from themselves, okay? Because it's never nefarious problems. All right, so let me go back to my code, or to my presentation. Okay, all right. So another mantra, I want everyone to get into this mantra. When your developer builds something, lazy load it, okay? If they're like, hey, I'm building feature A, did you lazy load it? You don't even have to know what that means, okay? Do you know what lazy load means? That is not part of this conversation. Say the word, did you lazy load it? And if they're like, no, be like, lazy load it. You don't have to know what that means even, okay? It's super simple. Let me just tell you, if they're like, it's going to take me 3 days. It's not going to take you 3 days, dude. We have the CLI. It's going to take you 5 minutes. Go lazy load. Like, okay? It's simple. Lazy load everything. That's your new mantra, okay? That's one of the new things that you get to say, and it de-arms that one developer, okay? All right. And then these other ones are a bit more technical. I can't explain them in this talk, okay? But I'm going to have a link to my slides at the end. If you walk up to your developer and you say any one of these, though, are we using track by on our ng for loops? You don't have to know what that means, okay? You don't need. If they say no, like that one developer, do it. That's all you have to say. Use track by on the ng-fors. And they're like, I don't even know what that is. Go read about it. It's really interesting. I heard about it. It's a really important thing for us to do, and I want you to. You don't have to know lazy loading. You have to know track by. You don't have to know what a CDN is. You have to make sure that things are using CDNs, and you have to know that someone's looking at your bundle analyzer. Okay, someone knows that your change detection strategy is on push and not the default one. You don't have to know what that means. You are the one that owns. Is our change detection strategy on push? No. Do it, right? You own that piece. I promise. Your developers start to disappear, and then everything I've already talked about, most of it's already very easily automatable. But you need to invest a little bit of time and money into making sure it's all automated so it happens every single time your developers run their commit. And quickly, this developer learns enough about you to turn into this developer, okay? And they just kind of like, all right, I'm going to let the manager manage this piece. I no longer have to run this stuff, okay? And that's where you want to be. This is a healthy place for your team. This is a healthy place for your app. This is a healthy place for any app to grow and to turn into that performant app where you start to realize that $7,000 extra per day based on the performance of your website. And ultimately, I know it's hard when developers, we do that stupid thing where we use the big words, right? And like none of it makes sense. And you're like, even if I knew it, that sounded real, right? Just don't accept no. Because the chances of you being in a scenario that no other app on earth is in and there's no way to fix the thing because you have such a unique app, you don't have that app, okay? I promise you don't. I promise you don't have that app. And all this stuff is fixable. Do not accept no. And if you have any questions about any of this stuff, my slides are here. And you can feel free to reach out to me on Twitter or send me an email. And again, the software development teams at Briebug are experts on everything I just said. I know that to be true. So if you have any questions, you can also feel free to reach out to the Briebug team as well. Thank you.